This story begins in the deserts of Mongolia, the largest desert in East Asia. A company had come here to extract oil, but their information was wrong and there was no oil. Now, they are all returning and a plane has been sent to take them back. The pilot's name is Frank and his co-pilot is with him. They are transporting all the goods and employees to Beijing. They board the plane and set off for Beijing. But a storm starts in this vast desert. Frank's co-pilot asks, "What should we do?" Frank says that if they go back, they will have to wait for fuel because they don't have enough to fly again, and he doesn't know how long it will take to get more fuel. Therefore, they must move forward. Frank takes the plane higher to escape the sandstorm, but their plane is overloaded, and they get caught in the storm. They try to communicate with the radio, but they lose contact, and one of their engines fails due to the sand. Frank says, "I need to make an emergency landing," and begins to descend. However, the landing is not easy because nothing is visible ahead. As the plane gets lower, the back part of the plane hits a rock, causing the rear door to open. One passenger is ejected and dies. The plane continues to crash through the desert and eventually stops. When the plane comes to a halt, they find that 2 more passengers are dead. However, they cannot go outside yet because the storm is still raging. Once the storm dies down, they find that the plane is completely buried in sand. After a few hours, the sand blows away and the plane becomes visible again. They check their food supply and discover they have a month's worth of supplies. One man says, "I will walk out of here." In fact, they need to travel 200 miles to get out, as they are no longer in Mongolia but somewhere in China. They don't know their exact location and their radio is not working. The man says, "I've done marathons and hiking. I can make it." They inform him that it's July, and the desert is hottest in July. If he drinks a glass of water, it will turn into sweat, losing 10 glasses of water from his body within minutes. He insists that he will travel only at night, but they warn him that he won't find the way, because the mountains here are magnetic, and his compass won't work. He'll keep circling back to the same spot. Eventually, he understands that he cannot go alone. That night, while they sleep inside the plane, one man named Davis goes outside to use the toilet. When he returns, his foot strikes a rock, causing him to slip into the sandstorm. He can't see anything and gets lost, though he calls for help. In the morning, when everyone wakes up, they realize that Davis is missing. They search for him but find nothing because he's buried in the sand. The rest of the group is disturbed by this. A lady from the group approaches Frank and asks him if anyone will come to rescue them. Frank says there is only a 5% chance, but they can't leave because they're in the middle of the desert with very little food and water. If they start walking, their supplies will be finished in 2 days, and they will all perish. However, Frank is an optimist and prefers to wait. Meanwhile, the people outside gradually lose hope that anyone will come to rescue them. 2 of them decide to leave, taking some water with them. Frank says no one can take water, leading to a fight, and the water falls. A man named Elliot comes up with an idea. He's been observing the plane and believes they can rebuild it. Frank asks him what he knows about planes, and Elliot explains that he used to design planes. No one knew much about Elliot because he wasn't part of the company extracting oil in Mongolia. He had been with them for 2 years. After learning about Elliot, the group is surprised but also hopeful. They decide to rebuild the plane, but Frank disagrees, saying it's impossible and refuses to do it. The next morning, one of them, named James, leaves. The lady tries to follow him, but Frank stops her, saying he will go to find him. Frank reaches the spot where the back of the plane had crashed, and he finds the body of the man who had fallen from the plane. His body is naked, and there are bullet casings near him. Frank is shocked, but then James arrives and says, "We weren't the first here. I came to take the watch that I lost to him in poker, but it's not on his hand now." They realized that desert smugglers had come before them and took the watch. They had also shot their companion's body for target practice. Frank tells James to head back, but James insists they rebuild the plane. Frank says he doesn't want to give them false hope, but James argues that everyone needs love and, if nothing else, hope. If they can't give hope, they should let the person do what they want. After hearing James, Frank agrees to help rebuild the plane, even though he knows it might not work. The next day, they all get back to work on the plane. They work at night because it's too hot during the day. One night, while welding, sparks hit the fuel they had stored for lighting fires and generators, causing a massive explosion. Thankfully, no one is injured, but all their fuel is destroyed. Now they only have enough fuel to get out, but they can't use it yet. They have to work during the day, despite the heat, and they begin the next phase of rebuilding the plane. They need to attach a wing, and they have only one chance. If the wing falls, it can never be lifted again because they don't have any cranes. They begin to lift it slowly, but just as they're doing so, the chain breaks, and the wing falls, hitting the plane. Everyone is stunned, but then one of their team members who had to attach the wing comes out and says, "I've done it." The wing had fallen exactly into the position it was meant to be. With the wing attached, the plane is now complete. Everyone is hopeful they can fly out of there. They start cleaning the sand away to make a runway. But then a huge electric storm hits, with lightning striking everywhere. The plane's wing contains fuel, so they run for cover. Elliot refuses to leave because he doesn't want to lose the plane. Just as lightning strikes, Frank pulls him away, saving his life. The plane, named Phoenix, symbolizes the Egyptian mythical bird that rises from the ashes. However, they still have a lot of work to do on the plane. Their water supply is dwindling, and one night, they see some people camping in the distance. These are smugglers who supply weapons across countries through the desert. Frank suggests they ask the smugglers for water. Elliot disagrees, but Frank and a few others go to ask. They hide behind rocks, ready to defend themselves. When they ask for water, one of the smugglers shoots at their man. Frank and his team open fire, killing the smugglers, but one escapes. Frank had the chance to shoot him, but didn't because he's not a killer. James, however, finds the watch of their fallen companion, realizing these were the same smugglers who had killed their friend. The smugglers are dangerous, and one of them is captured alive. Some want to kill him, but Frank stops them. An argument ensues, with Elliot blaming Frank for leading them into this situation. Frank punches Elliot, and now Elliot is angry, saying he won't help rebuild the plane anymore. He feels he's done enough. A lady named Kelly approaches him and says they can't finish the plane without him. He agrees, but only if everyone asks him. Frank, too, requests his help. The work on the plane resumes, and one day, they see the smuggler who had escaped returning with his group. They know the smugglers will attack when they're weak. Frank and his team work even harder. Eventually, they finish the plane, and Frank finds a magazine with model planes inside. Elliot had based the plane's design on these models. But it turns out that Elliot had only made small planes before, never anything as big as this one. Everyone is furious, especially Ayan, who points a gun at Elliot, saying the plane will never fly. But Elliot remains confident, saying it will fly. Frank stops Ayan, and then the storm hits again. The plane starts to lift off, and everyone realizes it will fly. Their hard work has paid off. However, the storm covers the plane in sand again. Once the storm ends, they remove the sand and start the plane. The smugglers, thinking they're dead, don't notice as the plane begins to move. The smugglers shoot at the plane, but none of the shots hit. When the runway ends, the smugglers think they're dead. But the plane, Phoenix, rises and soars into the sky. Everyone is elated because all their efforts have led to success. They've escaped the deadly desert where survival seemed impossible. The movie ends with photos of them with their families, happy and successful. Frank and his co-pilot open their own airline named Phoenix, and Elliot's photo is published in a magazine with a question mark, symbolizing his new hope with NASA. This is where the movie ends. Let me know which movie you want the next story from. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories.